Okay. Let's stretch this. Let's make this as big as possible. Boom. I don't want to use it like this though. Is there like a notepad or something that we can use instead? Notepad? No? On a MacBook, what's like a simple thing I could use, like a Microsoft Word or something? Please. Use Pages. Telling me use Pages. Okay. Pages. I gotta update it. I never used Pages before. So bear with me, guys. Let me break your streak. It can't, because they're putting some out. Alright, let's just get into this, shall we? Alright, what's good, people? Let me just put my phone on silent. So, let me know what you guys want in terms of the lessons. If there's any lesson you guys want me to touch on, do let me know. I'm gonna try and do a weekly lesson for you, like, yeah? Just on different topics, varied topics. More so, not necessarily to do with situations and scenarios, but more personal things that I use in my personal life, just to kind of keep me grounded, build me up, etc. Right? So today's one is for my hypervigilant people, and I'm someone myself that does, or that is very hypervigilant. But over the last couple of days, I've actually been working on it, and there are a few key techniques that I've used to, I don't want to say stop myself from being hypervigilant, but that I've used within myself to help use it just where it benefits me, because there is pros and cons to it, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to break down to you lot exactly what probably causes it, and I'm going to give you guys ways of how I personally used to deal with it. And there are 3 laws in particular that I want you guys to use, right? And I call these, let me get my notes up. I should really just do a big one, innit? Let me just do a big one. And let's make this big enough for you lot to see. Should we go for 20? Alright. So I'm going to call this the 3 laws. By the way, these ain't official. This is just what I call it. The 3 laws of neutrality, right? I'm going to break you guys the 3 laws. But before I break you guys the 3 laws, let's first just dive into, I guess, what a hypervigilant person looks like. Maybe it could be you. Maybe it can't be you. Maybe it is you, but you didn't know it was you. It's to do with, if you feel overwhelmed. So if you're someone that feels, let me bring this down to 15. I need to find another thing to use, man. If you guys know anything else to use, let me know. And it changes the whole thing crazy. So typically, if you feel overwhelmed, anxious, or overstimulated, right? If you are someone that typically has any of these, feeling overwhelmed, anxious, or overstimulated, it's not because life is hard. I know a lot of people like to point it towards that. I guess that's the easiest way to understand or diagnose yourself. I don't want to say diagnose, it fucking sounds like a medical issue. But it's so easy to blame it on because life is hard, because life is this. Maybe it may not necessarily be that. It typically isn't that anyway. It's usually because you are reacting to things that don't deserve your, that's the one, energy. You are reacting to things, or you are giving things your energy that do not deserve your energy. And I'm going to delve into that a bit further, right? So let's first focus on what actually causes this in the first place. Usually it is, shall I turn this a bit? Growing up in unstable environments. So, fucking having a man. So, you're someone like myself, grew up in the hood, grew up in Halsden, Northwest London. A lot of you know that already. if you grew up in, I guess, areas of devoid, areas of poverty, high crime rate, you typically would have to be hyper vigilant, right? To keep yourself alive, or survival skills, deductive reasoning skills. You would have to develop these skills regardless of if you chose to or if you didn't. Your environment forced you to, okay, no, the hell am I spelling it like this? Your environment would have forced you to be hyper vigilant. Let me just put that there so we know what we're talking about. What is going on today? So your environment would typically have caused you to be hyper vigilant, right? Because you'd have to develop these characteristics. However, sometimes you may not be able to differentiate between when to be hyper vigilant and when not to be hyper vigilant. And we're going to delve into that a bit further. So growing up in an unstable environment / let's just say the hood, right? The hood. Growing up in chaos. Again, that could be the hood, that could be your household, etc. Let's not go too deep into these examples. Being on edge. Always having to read the room. And always scanning for danger. Disrespect, loss / rejection, right? So if you are somebody that has grown up in an unstable environment, like we said, the hood, or if you are someone that has had a traumatic experience, whatever that may be, your own personal traumatic experience, we're not going to get into the personals. Chaos, being on edge, always having to read the room, always scanning for danger, disrespect, loss, rejection. You typically have developed this hypervigilant trait. And like I said, what usually happens is you don't know how to differentiate when to use it and when not to use it. Because I'm not saying it is typically a thing that you should never use. It's just you need to develop the skill set to know when to use it and when not to use it. And we're going to get into exactly how you'd be able to do that. So your nervous system learned one rule from early: stay alert or get hurt. That was useful once. It's poison now. Because your brain has defaulted to threat first, safety later. So you can use that in certain scenarios, certain situations. Maybe you had ops, maybe you had an abusive partner, maybe whatever the situation was, you developed a mindset of you have to stay alert or you're going to get hurt. But what has happened now, you've used that same theory or that same method and transmuted it into areas where it doesn't need to exist. And that's where you typically feel overwhelmed, anxious, or overstimulated, because you are giving your energy to things that don't exist, to the point where you're almost creating scenarios, or you've created a scenario so much so that you brought it to life that doesn't exist. So you might walk outside and you might just be like, shit, why the fuck is everyone looking at me? Have you ever walked down the road and you are so focused on how you look, you start focusing on like, am I swinging my arms too much? Am I walking too weird? Oh shit, I gotta stand up, look confident. And nobody can be there. That's your mind creating the scenarios from being hyper vigilant, because you've typically probably been in situations where you've had to be hyper vigilant, and your body has now created that skill set by default across all areas, where it worked in certain scenarios, but it's not necessarily what you require in all scenarios. So you start creating things in your mind, bro, that aren't even there. Because everything in life is energy, right? Let's just pause this for a second. Everything in life is energy, right? And what happens with energy is energy cannot be destroyed or created. It has to go somewhere. So the hypervigilance, the anxiety that you experience is energy. It's energy conjured up, right? And it needs to go somewhere. Now, if you are in a position of danger, if you're in a position where something's unstable, if you are in a threatening position, then by all means, this is where that energy will flow, right? For you to be hyper vigilant, for you to be very aware, for you to be like, okay, cool, I got to watch out for that. Okay, cool, I got to watch it for that scenario in case that happens, I'm going to react like that. If that happens, I'm going to react like that. That's good for those scenarios, but in your everyday scenario where most of your life is not going to be a threat, like walking down the street or walking towards the shop or being out with friends or being amongst a crowd, you've still carried that same energy of hypervigilance, of there being a threat within you. Now that energy needs to go somewhere. And if that energy is not released, it then turns into being overwhelmed or being anxious or being overstimulated. So much so to the point where you create scenarios in your head that aren't there. And to the point where you may feel very anxious before you even leave the house. Sometimes you may not even want to leave the house. I'm talking from experience. It's the point where you may not even want to be amongst people, or you might be thinking, oh shit, what do people think about me? And they're not even thinking anything, because everybody's living their own simulation. Not everything is about you. Not everyone's focusing on you, but you've created a scenario in your mind because you've been so used to being in such a hypervigilant state that you are in a perma hypervigilant state. And where it doesn't, in scenarios and situations where it doesn't require you to be hypervigilant, you are still being hypervigilant, and that energy needs to go somewhere. So when that energy isn't released, you then feel overstimulated, or then you develop anxiety, or then you develop this discomfort. So your mind then creates a scenario just for that energy to go somewhere. So your mind, because the energy can't be removed, but you can create an environment that doesn't exist just for that energy to flow in somewhere. I hope that makes sense. So follow me now. So let's not get distracted and shit and go too deep into examples and shit. So got device overheated. Okay, I think it's still recording. I hope it's still recording. Okay, so what happens is most man, and believe it or not, it's not just you. Remember, I'm talking from a personal experience right now. Right now, I'm being very open with you, yeah? So most men walk through life thinking, what do they think? Or did they clock me? Or do I look weird? Or did she judge me? Or like, you just create this shit, and it's ego mixed with fear, and the combination of the two is horrendous. In reality, like I said, everybody is living their own existence. Everybody's stuck in their own simulation. Everybody's going through their own version of life. Everybody's playing their own character, seeing things from their own point of view. They're not focused on you, but you've created this scenario because this energy needs to flow somewhere, right? I'm not going to stick on that too long. So everyone's stuck in their own simulation, man. People got their own bills. People got their own insecurities, their phone, their own problems. Not everything's fixated on you, right? You're just a background in 90% of people's lives. And when you realize this, the social anxiety collapses. Now, it's so easy for me to say, but I would show you practical steps in how to reverse this hypervigilance, or how to reverse this anxiety, right? Because it's going to come out in forms of anxiety, feeling like you don't want to go out, being antisocial. So always remember this: whenever you feel anxious, or whenever you're out and you're thinking, oh shit, is everybody looking at me? What's going on? Say this in your mind clearly: if they're not paying your rent, feeding you, sleeping next to you, fucking you, they're irrelevant. Fuck them. Yeah? Not fuck him like they're dickheads, but fuck him like they don't matter. They're irrelevant. I'm living my own simulation. They're living their own simulation. Boss man, one pound fish, is trying to get people to buy his fish. Corner shop, the lady selling the flat. Nobody cares. You're in your own mind, right? And this is ego, but ego can serve you in two ways. It can make you confident. It can make you believe in yourself, but it can also give you an inflated version of yourself where you believe that the spotlight is always on you. And in reality, it's not, right? Everybody's got their own situations, own problems going on. So let me get into the 3 laws of neutrality, right? So let's get into the first law. The first law is like I was explaining. Let's do law 1. People aren't looking at me. Like I explained, we won't spend too much time on this, but everyone's living in their own simulation. Most men walk through life thinking, who's looking at me? What are they thinking? Am I walking straight? Do I look weird? Am I being judged? Ego mixed with fear. And always remember they are irrelevant. They're not paying you rent. They're not paying your rent. They're not feeding you. They're not fucking you. They're irrelevant, right? So, because we've already explained that one, we'll go straight into law 2. Law 2 is the world is neutral. This actually might be the most important law, and this is one law that I personally focus on whenever I'm like going through a situation like that and I'm thinking, oh shit, is everyone looking at me? Is that this is the most important? The reason why is because the world is not against you. The world is not for you. The world is not testing you. It just exists, right? The traffic isn't disrespect. Silence isn't rejection. Someone not responding back to you. A delay, someone replying back to you late, or something being slow is not like, let's say you've got exams and shit and you're like, oh shit, I thought the results were going to come back on Monday. That doesn't mean you failed. It's not a sign. A look isn't a threat. If somebody looks at you weird, it doesn't mean that they're trying to challenge you. Like, you were trained to read everything, right? And that's what happens when you're in a very hyper-vigilant state permanently, because you were trained that every single signal is a sign. That's not the case. That's only only when you're in danger, or only when, remember, everything comes back to you've been so used to being in danger, or you've been so used to being in a threatening position that you are now in that perma state. In that situation, small things are a sign. If a man puts his hand in his pocket, you know what time it is. But you don't use that on everyday life. Like, not everything is a sign. Like, just because someone honks their horn, beep, 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 you start looking like, right, they beeping me. No. It doesn't mean that just because somebody looked at you like, you know what I'm saying? Maybe they was on a phone. Maybe they got a headphone in that you can't see. Like, there's so many different scenarios. Like, it's not for you. Like, just because somebody hasn't responded back quick enough, that doesn't mean she doesn't like you. Maybe someone's, like, the doorman has just come to her house, then given her delivery. She got Amazon delivery. You get what I'm saying? Maybe she's, I don't know, doing an exam. Like, just because she hasn't responded back to you, that's not a sign of rejection. So you were trained to read everything, right? And that only works when you're in a position of danger, like I said. But now that pattern keeps you tense, reactive, impatient, and easily provoked. So whenever you feel this situation, or whenever you are in this situation where you're overreading things or you're overlooking into things that don't exist, I want you to say to yourself, the world doesn't care enough to be against you. Repeat this. The world does not care enough to work against you. Jesus Christ, I'm sweating. 1 second. Let me even turn on the AC. I hope you guys can't hear the AC. I've just turned the AC on because, you know, I'm in a beautiful hot country. Anywho, so you were trained to read everything, yeah? Where was I? Yeah. So you were trained to read everything. You were trained to read everything has a meaning as something, because once upon a time it did. But now that pattern keeps you tense, it keeps you reactive, impatient, easily provoked, as I was saying. So repeat that on camera. That's where I was. The world doesn't care enough about you to be against you. Remember to repeat that to yourself one more time. The world doesn't care enough about you to be against you. It's not against you. It's not for you. It just exists. So let's move on to the next flaw. Let me move on to the next law, because let me not bore you lot. The next one is, and this is the last law, last but not least. Not everything needs a, guess it? Fucking hell, Jesus Christ. Not everything needs a reaction. Yes, noise is neutral. Movement is neutral. Your phone calls, brother, because I can't lie. Those times I get a phone call and I jump up, or someone might phone me and I always think the worst, especially if I haven't heard from. Have you ever got a phone call from someone you haven't heard from in so long? And you see the phone ringing and you see their name and your mind just always turns to the worst. You've created a scenario so bad that you avoid the phone call and you make up an excuse. Hey, just sorting something out. Is everything okay? Message me. And it's not because you don't want to speak to that person. You're just thinking the worst and you don't know how to react if they were to give you the worst news possibly that you can hear. You just create a scenario. Maybe they could have seen a family member. They could have phoned you because they were just checking up on you. They could have called you because there's a job opportunity. They've got a spare ticket to a game. They want to know if you're free for lunch later. There's so many other different scenarios, neutral scenarios and positive scenarios, which outweigh just the negative, that you could have thought of in your mind, but you've gone straight to the negative scenario. That is because, we're going back to it, you are in a hyper-vigilant state where you've always had to assume the worst. 1 second, who's this chick that messaged me? You've always thought to assume the worst, so you always naturally react negatively because you've always believed that something is a threat or something is negative or something is in imminent danger. And that's not always the case, bro. Because think about in your life, what is the percentages of something negative that has actually happened as opposed to something neutral and something positive? I guarantee it's the lowest percentage out of those. But what happens, you keep creating scenarios in your head. So, say this once every morning. Or whenever your brain tries to amplify something or tries to create a scenario that isn't there, I need you to repeat this in your head. Neutral until proven otherwise. Neutral until proven otherwise. The situation, everything that happens, the phone call you've got from that person you haven't heard from in a while, if somebody hasn't responded to you, like when they've been responding so quickly to you and now all of a sudden the responses are mute, or they're no longer responding, or the responses have been slow, or you're walking down the street, everything is neutral until proven otherwise. Stop creating scenarios that are already stop creating scenarios that don't exist. You're gonna turn yourself psycho, because I've been there, and I'm only telling you guys things that I personally use within my everyday life to keep me out of a hypervigilant state, because I've developed these characteristics or these traits or these skill sets which have worked for me, because when you're in the ends, it's a survival instinct thing. But now when I'm in a place where I'm living in Asia and everybody's friendly and everything's lovely and it's safe and people are saying Saudi kap kap kap, like I can't now turn around and take that as like, oh shit, are they looking at me weird? Oh shit, do I stick out like a sore thumb? No, some people are just being friendly. Everything is neutral until proven otherwise, like I said. So this rewires your brain from seeing things as a threat to maybe safe, to neutral to maybe threat. That's the difference between living like a prey and living like a wolf. So remember the 3 laws that I've told you guys. Law number 1, people aren't looking at me. Law number 2, the world is neutral. And law number 3, not everything needs a reaction. Probably going to dive into this more in a different video.